We sold our house, packed our bags, and in the middle of a pandemic, we moved to Australia. This is how we did it.
First, choosing which state to live.
Australia is a big country and each state is different. So before moving, I spent a lot of time reviewing information on official websites, personal blogs, videos on YouTube, and anecdotes from friends. I tried to imagine what it would be like for our family to live in a particular state, the pros and cons, and obviously reflecting on our personal preferences.
For me, I was really lucky because I had a chance to visit and see a little bit of Sydney and Brisbane when I traveled there for work or when we traveled for a short vacation. However, like I said, it would really depend on your personal circumstances and your preferences. So, for example, I can't really see myself living in Sydney. Visiting for sure, definitely, I will love to visit again, but I don't really see myself living there long term. However, I have friends who purposely moved to Sydney because they already have family living there, or perhaps there's just more opportunities for them there, or simply because they want to live in a city center. Brisbane just kind of feel more like my vibe. Don't get me wrong, obviously, you cannot make an accurate judgment of a city just by staying there for a day or two, but the experience was useful nonetheless. Oh, and I also have to say, how life is like in the state capital like Sydney, Melbourne, and Brisbane does not necessarily reflect what life will be like in the regional areas in the same state. So that is why it's still important to do your research. Second, securing a job. As a New Zealand citizen, we can live and work in Australia indefinitely without having to apply for a visa. We still technically get a visa, but this is automatic and known as Special Category Visa or Subclass 444. I have friends who moved to Australia before securing a job, but I just can't do that. I'd like to plan ahead. So I secured a job first before moving to Australia, and I actually have created a video about how I found my first nursing job in Australia while I was still living in New Zealand, and you can watch that in the info card above or in the description box below. Actually, if we're just meeting, kia ora, my name is Binibining Veronica. Welcome to the Little Cup from New Zealand to Australia, where I help people create better plans for their big move abroad. So if you want to plan better, please make sure to hit like and subscribe. Salamat po! Alright, between finding your dream job versus your preferred state or city, you may need to compromise which one you prioritize more. So, for example, if you are doing your job search, you can focus on whatever opportunities are available in your preferred state, or you can also look for jobs based on your preferred role, regardless of which state or city it will be. But personally, I didn't like to compromise. My husband wanted to move to Australia more than I did, so I did tell him that, if I don't get the role that I want in the city where we wanted to live, then I wouldn't move at all. I know it sounds like so bossy and ungrateful. However, I was really happy in New Zealand. I was ready to live the rest of my life there, and I wasn't moving for something less. But yeah, that was just my thoughts anyway. Third, dealing with what we own in New Zealand. After submitting our resignation letter, we only had a little over a month to sort out what we owned in New Zealand. Some of our things we threw out or donated. Most of it we sold through Facebook Marketplace or word of mouth. And for your reference, we also sold our cars and our first home in New Zealand. I was emotional during that time because I really loved our first home, and to me, it symbolizes so much more than just a property. Anyway, we were still lucky that we sold our first home at market value because the prices of properties in New Zealand started decreasing in value, like what's happening in Australia now. And then going back on our belongings, there were things that we were definitely going to take with us in Australia, mostly items that I absolutely love, from my bridal gown to our mattress to appliances which were relatively new, like our washing machine, microwave. I know, it felt a lot. For your reference, we used Transworld to ship our belongings. This is not a sponsored video. However, I'm just sharing my experience. I will create a full video about the whole process, so make sure you hit that notification bell so you will know when I upload new videos just like this one. For now, just know that the cost that you will pay will vary depending on how much space you'll take and how much cover you like in terms of insurance. So, for example, I got a quote of 1,599 New Zealand dollars for items not exceeding 2.4 cubic meters and a quote of 2,149 New Zealand dollars for items not exceeding 3.64 cubic meters. There is also an Australian quarantine inspection service fee of 270 New Zealand dollars, and the insurance premiums vary from 2.0 to 4.5% depending on what cover you will get. There is also an extra fee if you need to store your items in a storage unit. Say, for example, if you don't have any accommodation yet in Australia by the time that your items arrived. So in our experience, because of the pandemic, it took like 3 months before our items was shipped from New Zealand to Australia. I think it was shipped from New Zealand to Sydney pretty early on, like on time. However, the delay happened between Sydney to Brisbane just because it was at the peak of COVID in Sydney during that time, if I'm not mistaken. So yeah, it took about 3 months before our items were shipped to our rental property. And on that note, let's talk about rental accommodation. Fourth is accommodation and utilities. I already knew that there is a rental crisis in Brisbane, so we tried our best to secure a property before leaving New Zealand. We looked at realestate.com.au, domains.com.au, but unfortunately, we were unable to find a rental property before leaving New Zealand. So in the end, we stayed in a hotel for 2 weeks and it was really expensive. I don't actually recommend doing this. I mean, it was really good accommodation. It was technically a one-bedroom apartment unit. It was so good because we have a 2-year-old. It was comfortable. The actual hotel was in Wollongabba, so it was in the center of everything, close to work as well. But like I said, it's very pricey, at least for me anyway. So to give you an example, our first 5 nights cost 938 New Zealand dollars, and we also had to pay extra for parking. By the way, during this time, I was actually already working full time when we were still living in the hotel. So the setup really felt temporary. Fortunately, after 2 weeks, we got a rental property in Mount Gravatt, which was 10 minutes from my work, which was really good. I'm just looking at the price. So we paid 565 Australian dollars per week for that 2-story duplex property. It has 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, and a single car garage. The property manager helped us arrange with the utility connection by connecting us with a third-party company because I couldn't really decide early on which company I'll sign up for. Australia is a very big country. There's a lot of competing companies, and I couldn't possibly summarize all of the information in one video. Just to give you an idea, we got our power through Red Energy and our internet at home through Belong. So for our power, we pay 3 monthly, in which our first bill was 156 Australian dollars. This actually seems lower than our power bill in New Zealand, but just take note that for the first 3 months, we didn't have a washing machine and we used laundromat because remember, we were still waiting for our things from New Zealand to Australia. So yeah, I think nakatipid kami sa kuryente for the first 3 months. Then we paid 70 Australian dollars per month for our home broadband, which was unlimited NBN Standard Plus. So NBN is like fiber connection in New Zealand. And then for SIM cards, we got that as soon as we touched down from Brisbane Airport. Let me just look at my list. So we also got a Vodafone promo for new arrivals. May pa-promo sila nun pagdating namin. So for two $50 prepaid starter pack, so 2 SIM cards, technically worth $50 each. We got that for 40 Australian dollars altogether. That also included 45 gig of data. And then after a month, the succeeding payment is 30 Australian dollars each. So let me just repeat that. Individually, we technically paid $20 for the first month and then $30 monthly. So for your reference, that plan included additional 3 gig of data each month. Your data also accumulates. So at the time of recording of this video, I still have 17 gigabytes. And then I have another 147 gig on my data bank. 495 minutes of international call, and unlimited talk and text. If this suddenly feels like a promotional video, obviously it's not.
Not.
I think I'm just still surprised of how much my $30 can get in Australia compared to having a plan in New Zealand. Fifth, buying our first car. As I mentioned previously, we only had a little over a month to prepare for our move to Brisbane, and surprise, surprise, we forgot to book a rental car. So anyway, while we were staying at Novotel in Auckland, the night before our flight, we were scrambling to find a rental vehicle. So in the end, I managed to book a rental SUV for 2 days through economy bookings. I paid 267 New Zealand dollars and 69 cents to book it, and another 323 Australian dollars and 86 cents on arrival. There's insurance policies for our cars, including CTP. More on CTPs on a different video. However, for this video, if you are finding value, please make sure to hit like and subscribe. And if you want to help the channel further, then please click that super thanks icon. Otherwise, you can support me through Buy Me a Coffee. And on that note, thank you so much for my 2 supporters at Buy Me a Coffee. I am very, very grateful. 6, banking. I opened a bank account while I was still in New Zealand just so I can provide this with my employer. But like in New Zealand, you can't really withdraw from that account until you completed your application in person. And I just realized that I didn't really have to do this before starting work anyway. So for my husband, he opened a bank account after we arrived in Australia. And by this time, we finally received our Visa debit card, and there's really no separate EFTPOS cards here like in New Zealand. So we just use our debit cards for day-to-day transactions. 7th, signing up with a childcare provider and GP practice. While we were still living in New Zealand, I tried and emailed, different childcare providers within 10 to 15 drive of my new workplace in Australia. However, I only ever got a response from one childcare provider before we arrived in Australia. So in the end, I signed up with them, and my daughter was 2 years old at that time. We had to book her for 4 full days because, as you know, we don't really have any family here, any friends to begin with, and my husband and I were both working full-time, so we are heavily reliant on childcare services. Finally, we enrolled in a GP practice and just checked that all my daughter's vaccinations were up to date as per Australian standards. In her case, she had to get extra flu jabs. In terms of childcare fees, I was actually surprised by the cost of childcare here in Australia. I thought that it was already expensive in New Zealand, pero yun nga, may mamahal pa rin talaga. Let me just have a quick look here. So the fees are definitely more expensive here. To give you an idea, my daughter's 4 days a week here in Australia cost 432 Australian dollars. It does include meals and nappies, but that's still definitely more than what we were paying for in New Zealand. So for example, in New Zealand, we would pay 163 New Zealand dollars for 3 full days a week, or 216 New Zealand dollars for 4 days. So that also includes nappy and meals except on Fridays. And by the way, if you don't know, in New Zealand and in Australia, the fees are different for under 3s and over 3 years old. So the numbers that I shared are for kids who are under 3 years old. The good thing though is, as a New Zealand citizen, we can apply for childcare subsidies. So at the moment, we are not paying the full price of childcare, which really helps. And another thing, as a New Zealand citizen, we can also enroll in Medicare, which helps with the cost of seeing a doctor, getting medicines, and covering some or all of healthcare cost. At this point in the video, I just want to share that with the visa that we have, special category visa subclass 444, as a New Zealand citizen, although we can stay here indefinitely, we cannot access student loans or social welfare such as disability payment, things like that. Obviously, this is not an immigration advice. Please check official government website. I am just sharing the information that I have gathered. And if you are keeping tabs of all our expenses so far, I might as well include our plane ticket. So we booked it through Air NZ, Air New Zealand. So the price of our one-way premium economy ticket to Brisbane for 2 adults and 1 child, 2 years old at that time, was 1,804 New Zealand dollars. That includes an extra bag on top of 7 checked-in baggages because we did pack a lot of things. I don't know. It's really difficult when you have a toddler. It's as if you're really carrying your whole house with you wherever you go. Everyone, it's me, Veronica, the editor. While I was editing this video, I finally got a reply from my friend who recently moved from New Zealand to Australia. They also use Transworld, but they had to transfer their pets as well. So to fly them to Australia, it cost $2,692. That included flight tickets, aircraft-friendly carrier, and transport from New Zealand to Brisbane. I haven't actually asked her if it was alright to mention her name in this video, so I'll still have to wait for her reply about that. If she said yes, I'll just write it in the comment section below. Only because I know that people are not always comfortable, sharing their information. So same for you as well. Like if you feel like you want to share your experience, but you don't really want to be named or anything like that, then that's fine. You can just message me in my Facebook account. So it's at Binibining Veronica. And feel free, if you have any tips and tricks and things like that, then we could put it in the video. Otherwise, if you want to shout out, let me know in the comment section below as well. And let me know what you want to see next on the video. If you have seen in the comment section that someone has already mentioned it, just like that comment, and the more likes I guess that particular comment gets, that gives me an idea of what you guys want to see. What we struggled the most, I think, would definitely be finding a rental accommodation. That's why if you can sort out your accommodation before moving to Australia, that is well and good. Otherwise, utilize your friends or family members. But like I said, for us, our family isn't really here. We didn't have friends to begin with. So our only option was short-term accommodation, either through Airbnb or through hotel. Then another difficulty, I think, would be the application process, only because most of it is automated. So for example, creating or applying for Medicare, applying for childcare subsidy through Centrelink, getting your IHI number, it all happens in a government website. So it's mygov.au. And obviously initially we weren't really familiar with the interface or how things were done, and it does take a while to talk to an actual person if you ring their 0800 number. But yeah, I hope you won't struggle as much as we did. And I think just the overall transitioning phase of, being unfamiliar of how things are. I remember paying 50 Australian dollars for 3 hours worth of car park, not knowing that if we actually booked ahead, we would have paid lesser. Things like that, and then even spending 20 minutes drive from our rental property to CBD, finding car park again just so we can go to the Department of Transport. And then my coworker was like, "Why did you have to go to the CBD anyway? There's just Department of Transport down the road." I was like, "I didn't know that." How I wish these information are available in our orientation book, for employees from overseas. Obviously, this information, you can easily look it up online. But the thing is, when you are in the middle of that chaos, it is really difficult to focus, understand, and digest the information. That's why, again, I would like to encourage you before you move, give yourself some time. Read as much as you can, and we are actually starting a Facebook group, so feel free to join. It's How to Australia Nurses Essentials. I will try and upload some of my checklists there as well to help with your planning. I will be adding another video in this playlist just to include why we moved from New Zealand to Australia, talking about work opportunities and salaries, so just keep an eye on that from time to time. Otherwise, if you turn on your notification bell, then you will know when I upload new video just like this one. For now, I wish you all the best with your journey, and I hope you will be blessed. I'll see you soon. Bye!